In a world where people document everything, there are those who choose not to. No constant updates, no personal highlights, no need to turn their life into something visible. While others feel almost compelled to share, these individuals remain selectively silent. And that silence is often misunderstood. It's seen as distance, disinterest, or even secrecy. But psychologically, it's usually none of those things. Instead, it reflects a different relationship with attention, identity, and control over one's own narrative. There's a certain kind of person who exists online, but only just enough to be present. They may scroll, observe, or occasionally engage, but when it comes to sharing their own life, they hesitate or choose not to at all. No constant updates, no detailed posts, no public display of personal moments. To others, this can seem unusual in a world where sharing has become the norm. But psychologically, this behavior often reveals a deeper structure in how they process visibility, emotion, and personal boundaries. At its core, not sharing personal life on social media is about control, not over others, but over exposure. Social media platforms are built around visibility. They encourage people to convert private experiences into public content, turning everyday life into something that can be observed, evaluated, and reacted to. For some individuals, this process feels unnatural. It introduces an external layer into something that was originally internal. A moment is no longer just lived. It becomes something that can be seen. And for people who are sensitive to this shift, the act of sharing can feel like a loss of ownership over their own experiences. This is where psychological boundaries become important. People who choose not to share tend to have a clearer internal system for what belongs to them and what can be accessed by others. Not everything is meant to be seen. Not everything is meant to be interpreted by a wide audience. This doesn't mean they are secretive. It means they are selective. Access to their life is not distributed equally. It is given intentionally, often only to people they trust or feel close to. Social media, by contrast, collapses these layers, making it easy for acquaintances, strangers, and distant connections to have the same visibility as close relationships. For someone who values depth over breadth, this can feel misaligned. Another important psychological factor is the relationship with validation. Many social media behaviors are driven, consciously or unconsciously, by external feedback. Likes, comments, and reactions create a feedback loop that reinforces sharing. But individuals who avoid posting their personal life tend to rely less on this system. Their sense of identity is not built primarily through external acknowledgement. Instead, it is formed internally, through reflection, direct experiences, and private meaning. This does not mean they do not care what others think. It means they do not need constant confirmation to feel secure in their experiences. There is also an emotional layer to this behavior. Sharing personal life publicly introduces unpredictability. Once something is posted, it is open to interpretation. It can be misunderstood, judged, or compared. Even positive feedback can create pressure to maintain a certain image. For some individuals, this emotional exposure feels unnecessary. By choosing not to share, they reduce the number of external variables that can affect their emotional state. It becomes a form of regulation, not avoidance, but containment. Interestingly, people who do not share much online often have a more private processing style. When something meaningful happens, their instinct is not to broadcast it, but to understand it. They reflect internally or share selectively within a small circle. This creates a different relationship with memory. Moments are experienced first, processed second, and preserved privately. They are not immediately translated into content. As a result, these experiences often feel more intact, less influenced by how they might appear to others. There is also a cognitive difference in how attention is managed. Social media encourages a split between experiencing and presenting. When something happens, there is often an immediate awareness of how it could be shared. This creates a subtle division of attention. People who avoid sharing tend to resist this split. They prioritize being present over being visible. The moment is not interrupted by the need to capture or frame it. This allows for a more direct and uninterrupted experience of reality. Past experiences can also shape this preference. Individuals who have felt exposed, judged, or misunderstood may develop a stronger inclination toward privacy. They learn that once something is shared publicly, it is no longer fully under their control. But this behavior does not always come from negative experiences. Sometimes, it comes from simple awareness. They recognize that certain moments feel more meaningful when they are not externalized. Not everything gains value from being seen, some things lose it. Another key factor is the perception of authenticity. Social media often creates a gap between reality and representation. Even when people try to be genuine, there is an awareness of being observed. This can subtly shift behavior, turning expression into performance. For individuals who are sensitive to this dynamic, sharing can feel inauthentic. Not because they are being dishonest, but because the act itself changes the experience. Choosing not to share becomes a way to maintain consistency between who they are privately and how they exist publicly. This behavior is often misunderstood as antisocial, but that interpretation misses the underlying motivation. Many of these individuals are not avoiding connection, they are redefining it. Instead of broad, surface-level interaction, they prefer fewer, more meaningful relationships. Communication happens directly, not through an audience. Conversations replace posts. Presence replaces visibility. Their social world is not smaller, it is more concentrated. There is also a practical aspect related to time and mental energy. Sharing on social media requires more than just posting. It involves thinking about what to share, how to present it, and how it might be received. For some, this process feels unnecessary. It adds another layer of cognitive effort to something that was originally simple. By opting out, they conserve that energy. Attention is not spent on managing an online presence. It is redirected toward experiences themselves. From a psychological perspective, this reflects a lower dependence on external reinforcement and a higher reliance on internal validation. Experiences are meaningful because they are experienced, not because they are acknowledged. This creates a more stable sense of satisfaction. External feedback fluctuates, but internal meaning remains more consistent. As a result, emotional stability is less tied to external reactions. However, this does not mean these individuals are completely unaffected by social comparison. They may still observe others and feel the same pressures. The difference lies in their response. Instead of participating in the cycle, they create distance from it. This distance acts as a buffer. It reduces the intensity of comparison and allows for a clearer perception of what actually matters to them. There is also a long-term perspective involved. People who do not focus on sharing tend to value preservation over presentation. They may document their life in private ways, journals, personal photos, or direct conversations, rather than public posts. This reflects a shift in priorities. The goal is not to display life, but to experience and remember it. The value of a moment is not determined by how many people see it, but by how deeply it is felt. Over time, this approach influences overall well-being. With less exposure to constant feedback and comparison, the mind becomes less reactive. Attention is less fragmented. Identity feels more stable because it is not constantly being adjusted based on external perception. Life is experienced more directly, without the additional layer of interpretation that social media often introduces. Ultimately, people who do not like sharing their personal lives on social media are not simply disengaging from a trend. They are operating from a different psychological framework. They value control over exposure, depth over visibility, and meaning over presentation. Their behavior reflects a preference for keeping certain parts of life unfiltered and unobserved. And once you understand that, their silence online no longer looks like absence. It looks like intention, because not everything meaningful needs to be shared. And for them, what remains unseen is often what matters most.